All right, so this is going to be our first attempt at doing a virtual lesson right now. We moved on to chapter 9. We're finished with the civics unit, but the good thing about the civics unit is it's going to give us a lot of background and a real solid foundation for going through some of the ideas that we're going to look at in chapter 9. Chapter 9 is called Washington's Presidency, by the way. So we're going to go through these slides together. I'm going to point some things out because, like I said, this is our first time going through this virtual learning thing, and I'm learning as much about it as you are, and hopefully. And I'm going to kind of walk you through how these slides are going to work. There's some features I want you to be aware of as we get into it. All right, with that said, let's go into chapter 9 right now, Washington's presidency. All right, so picking up where we left off with civics, the first presidential election in this country's history happened in 1789. So if you recall from our civics unit, under the new Constitution, George Washington was going to be the head of the executive branch of the government. He wins the first presidential election in 1789. Actually, a little bit of trivia for you. That election took place over 1788 and 1789. Things didn't happen very quickly back in those days. It took a lot of time for information to be distributed to people and for votes to be tallied and things like that. So it was a real process back then. Right here, there's a video link that I would like you to watch at your own time today. It is about 3 minutes long. All the videos that are embedded in this slideshow, by the way, are pretty short, so you're not going to get saddled with something that's 20 minutes long. So after he won the election, George Washington traveled to what was our nation's capital at the time, New York City, the Big Apple. Yep. He was inaugurated, which means he was formally sworn in as president on April 30th, 1789. No, I was not there. All right. So precedent. A lot of the information in this chapter or this section of chapter 9 talks about the idea of precedents. So basically what a precedent is, it is something that happens before something else and it becomes an example. So over here we have some examples up here. Things you might not consider to be precedents. So we don't call, in our country, we don't call the president, we don't call them His Excellency or Your Highness or something like that, or the Right Honorable Mr. Washington. We just call them Mr. President. All right. That was a precedent that was set by George Washington. He's the first person that did that, and other presidents that followed George Washington followed suit and did the same thing. We also talked about this when we did civics, and we mentioned and explored a little bit early on that George Washington served 2 terms as president. Okay. That was never in the Constitution. The Constitution during Washington's time didn't say how many terms a president could serve. Washington limited himself. He stopped serving after 2 terms because he was tired and he wanted to get back to Virginia, and that just became a precedent. After that, everybody until 1940, 160 some years later, just said, "Oh, Washington did 2 terms. I'm going to do 2 terms." So that was an example of a presidential precedent right there. Same with naming the president or calling the president Mr. President instead of something more elaborate. All right. You guys know about this too. You guys did projects on cabinet departments. The cabinet, of course, is the group of advisors that are to guide the president. All the issues and troubles and challenges that faced George Washington really piled up in this era, and it became clear to a lot of people that he needed some help, some advisors. So he set up the cabinet. Also a link right here. And let's talk about finances. A big part of this exploration of this part of our country's history is going to be about finances and economics. So let's define the word finance. So finance is the management, the using, spending, saving, and borrowing of large amounts of money, big money, not just your allowance, all right? So the first Secretary of the Treasury under Washington's cabinet was Alexander Hamilton. Snap your fingers if you've heard of Alexander Hamilton before. I think all of you probably should have. If you're a big fan of $10 bills, you definitely know who Alexander Hamilton is because he's on there. His portrait's there. And he's also the subject of a musical on Broadway that I think it tours around the rest of the country now too. Yeah. But I think up until the point when that musical was released, he was most famous for being on the $10 bill, but now he's got a whole new group and a whole new generation of fans. Okay. So as the Secretary of Treasury, and forgive my memory, I'm not sure if anybody picked Treasury Secretary for their executive branch project before spring break, but if you did, you got a little bit of background on this. It's the job of the Treasury or Secretary of Treasury to straighten out the nation's finances, okay? Make sure that things are on an even footing and we're not too far in debt. So at this time, speaking of debt, that was the big priority, was dealing with the government's war debts. Now we're going to go way back to before, maybe even before winter break. We were talking a lot about the Revolutionary War. So if you recall, to beat England as a fledgling new country, we needed to rely a lot on help from other countries. And that help was military. We had supplies and soldiers and equipment from other countries, but a lot of it had to do with money that was lent to us from countries like Spain and France and the Netherlands. Okay, we needed to pay back our debts to maintain trust and respect with other nations and with our citizens. So what does that mean? Well, imagine that you are a new upstart country like the United States was, and you want to be part of the conversation of countries in the world, and you want to have a healthy trading relationship with other countries. You need to make sure that other countries realize that you are a respectable country, okay, that you will make good on your debts and you'll pay them back. Now imagine if this little tiny country, the United States, borrowed, we'll say $10 million from Spain to help beat the English, okay? Well, we did beat the English with the help of Spain. And when the war is over, Spain says, hey, you know what? We need that money back. We loaned that to you. That wasn't a gift. Now, if the United States wanted to be taken seriously in the eyes of other countries in the world, more powerful countries, they're going to need to show that they can handle their money and they can be trusted with loans. So it was very, very important for the United States to pay back Spain, France, and the Netherlands. Also, it would show, if we cleaned up our debt, it would show other countries that we're responsible and they can trust us in the future, that they can lend us money in the future and they can trade with us and we'll be dependable and reliable. So here's Alexander Hamilton. Again, there's a video link right here. Alexander Hamilton disagreed with other founding fathers in that he believed in a strong central government and that the central government should be stronger than the state governments and that government should encourage business, industry, and manufacturing, get that real healthy economic system set up. And that fixing the nation's finances would mean three things. Number one, it would mean paying off all the war debt. Remember, that would make us look more respectable in the eyes of other countries. It would increase the government's revenue or income through tariffs. Tariffs, again, we talked about these a little while ago. Those are taxes on imported goods. So basically, if we made canoes here and they made them cheaper in France, and it was cheaper for Americans to import canoes from France, that would do two things, okay? We would not be able to sustain or keep a canoe building industry in this country because people would just get it cheaper from France. So if we had these cheap canoes that were coming in from France, one thing we might do is slap a tariff on them, which would make their cost equal or maybe more than the price of canoes that were made in the United States. People then are going to be more likely to buy American canoes, which is going to support canoe building industries, and also that tariff, that amount that's added to the top of a price of an item or goods and services like that. That money goes right into the national bank. So the country makes money off that too. So the outcome, yes, Alexander Hamilton says we need a national bank. There are guys on the other side over here, like James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, say, no, a national bank creates an unhealthy partnership between government and wealthy business. See, we still have issues with that today. So here, the outcome of this debate, whether you want a national bank or you don't want a national bank, comes down to the issue of how you interpret or understand the Constitution. So when we say strict interpretation of the Constitution, we mean that we're following it to the letter of the document, okay? And there's no information in there or no words in that document that say that we can set up a national bank or Congress has the ability or the executive branch has the ability to set up a national bank. That's not in there, okay? George Washington backed Alexander Hamilton, and they ended up winning. They got their side, and the Bank of the United States was created in 1791. But what this did was set up a preview of the factions and different groups in American politics that we still see today. So next chapter, I believe, or chapter 10, we're going to talk about the election of 1800, which things go off the rails. It's crazy. All right, so go into Google Classroom. There is a sheet with comprehension questions. It's very short. It's about half as long as they normally are. And I want you to read pages 313 through 317. And when you're done with that, answer those questions, submit them in Google Classroom by 11:59 on Monday, March 30th, 2020. Hope everybody's doing all right. Hope to see you soon.